I always thought a prenup was like a bulletproof vest. It turns out if you're not careful, it's just a piece of paper that can be ripped in half. At least that's what my ex-wife tried to tell a judge. Let me start from the beginning. And I mean the real beginning. Not the wedding, not the honeymoon, the part where I was just a guy with grease under his fingernails and a dream that wouldn't let me sleep. I'm Mason Rodriguez, 45 years old. I own a fabrication shop in Phoenix. 15 employees, industrial welders, machinists, a couple apprentices I probably should have fired years ago, but couldn't bring myself to let go. On paper, I'm worth about $2.5 million. Sounds nice, right? Sounds like I should be on a golf course somewhere, sipping something with a little umbrella in it. But here's what people don't understand about being asset rich. You're usually cash poor. Every dollar I make goes right back into that shop. Steel, electricity, workers' comp, OSHA compliance, raw materials. A loan costs me 30 grand a month. I work 70 hours a week. I haven't taken a real vacation in 5 years. My CPA tells me I'm a millionaire. Meanwhile, I'm eating gas station burritos at midnight because I don't have time to sit down at a restaurant. That's the life. And then I met her. Crystal was 28 when we started dating. Blonde, green eyes, the kind of smile that made you forget you had responsibilities. She worked at this BMW dealership selling extended warranties. Said she admired a man who built something with his hands. She would bring me dinner at the shop at 9:40 at night. She would rub my shoulders when I came home, smelling like steel dust and cutting oil. I thought I found the one. We dated for 2 years. When I turned 43, I decided to propose. Got down on one knee at this fancy steakhouse. She cried, I cried. The whole place clapped. But here's the thing about being 43 with 2.5 million in assets and a 30-year-old fiancé. People talk. My lawyer called me the next day. Guy named Carlos Martinez. Been with me since I bought my third welding machine. He said, "Congratulations. Now let's talk about protecting your business." I didn't want to hear it. He said it anyway. You need a prenup, non-negotiable. You've got 15 employees, commercial property, accounts receivable worth 6 figures at any given time. If this marriage goes south, she could take half of everything. And in Arizona, it's community property. Doesn't matter if she cheats. Doesn't matter if she empties your bank account and runs off to Vegas. The court splits everything 50-50 unless you have documentation saying otherwise. I told him she wasn't like that. He said, they never are until they are. So I had the conversation with her. Worst dinner of my life. I sat across from her at our kitchen table, and I told her Martinez was insisting on a prenup. I watched her face change, not angry, just calculating like she was running numbers in her head. She asked what was in it. I told her the truth. She would get a set amount based on how long we were married, but there was a clause, an infidelity waiver. If she was unfaithful, she would get nothing. She got quiet for a long time. Then she said something I'll never forget. "So, you don't trust me?" I said. "It's not about trust. It's about protecting something I spent 20 years building." She shook her head slowly like she was thinking. Then she smiled and said, "Okay, I'll sign it." But here's the part that should have been my warning. She hired her own lawyer, a woman named Sarah Thompson, sharp and expensive. Thompson reviewed the prenup and told Crystal point blank, "Do not sign this. The infidelity clause is aggressive. If he ever catches you doing anything, you walk away with nothing." Crystal signed it anyway. At the time, I thought that meant she loved me, that she was so confident in our future that the clause didn't scare her. Looking back, she signed it because she thought she was smarter than me. She thought she could handle me, keep me happy enough, distracted enough, blind enough that I would never catch on. She was wrong. We got married in May of 2022, a small ceremony of about 30 people. She wore white. I wore a suit that cost more than my first truck. We honeymooned in Cabo for a week. It was the most relaxed I'd been in a decade. I remember one night sitting on the balcony, she asked me where I kept important documents. I told her I had a fireproof safe in my home office. Birth certificate, passport, business papers, the prenup, all of it locked up tight. She said, "Oh, okay," and sipped her margarita. I didn't think anything of it at the time. When we got back, everything went right back to normal. Me at the shop by 5 a.m., home by 8 p.m., if I was lucky. Weekends spent doing paperwork or fixing something that broke. She said she understood. For a while, I believed her. The first year was fine. We were still in that honeymoon phase where you overlook the small stuff. The second year, things started to shift. She got bored. I could see it. She would complain about the house being too quiet, about me never being around. She started going to the gym more, getting her nails done twice a week, buying clothes she only wore once. I didn't say anything. I figured she deserved to enjoy the lifestyle. I was the one who couldn't give her my time, so the least I could give her was my money. By year 2.5, we barely talked. And that's when the errands started. She would take the Ford F-250. Now, I need to explain something about that truck. It wasn't in my personal name. It was owned by my company, registered as a fleet vehicle for tax purposes, which means I put it on the same tracking and monitoring system as my work trucks, GPS telematics, and the same commercial dash cam system I use for liability protection. She hated that camera when I first installed it, said it felt like I was spying on her. I told her it was just for insurance, that the footage only gets pulled if there's an accident or a claim. I didn't mention the real-time alerts. I didn't mention I could access the feed remotely from my phone anytime I wanted. She stopped worrying about it after a few months, and the F-250 was the only vehicle she had. I drove my work truck to the shop every day. If she wanted to go anywhere, she took the Ford. She didn't have a choice. I kept the F-250 on a separate profile in the Fleet app, tagged it as F1 so it wouldn't get mixed up with the work trucks, but it ran through the same system, same alerts, same remote access, same motion-activated recording. It started on a Tuesday. I was at the shop going over material orders when my phone buzzed. Fleet alert. Asset F1 stationary for 4 hours. Location Desert Ridge area. The tracking system was hardwired directly into the battery. Didn't matter if the truck was running or not. It was always on, always pinging location data back to the server. That's how I knew where my work trucks were parked overnight. That's how I'd get an alert if one of them moved when it shouldn't. And that's how I got an alert when the F-250 sat in an office complex parking lot for 4 hours in the middle of a Tuesday. But even after that, I wasn't suspicious. At least, not yet. I just thought maybe she was shopping or something happened. So I pulled up the remote camera feed to check, and what I saw changed everything. The footage was motion activated, started recording the moment she got in the truck that morning. I watched her drive to this office complex parking lot, watched her pull into a spot on the far end, away from other cars. She backed in. She always backed in. Said she liked being able to pull straight out when she left. I never thought anything of it before, but that habit meant the forward camera faced outward toward the parking lot. And I watched a black Dodge Charger pull right up in front of her. The camera caught everything through the windshield. She got out of the F-250, walked around to the Charger, and kissed the driver through his window. A real passionate kiss, the kind that tells you everything you need to know. Then she walked around to the passenger side, got in his car, and they drove off together. 4 hours later, he dropped her back off in the same spot. She got back in the F-250, and the cabin camera caught her fixing her hair in the mirror before she drove home, like nothing happened. My stomach wasn't in knots. That's what people always say, right? My stomach was in knots. Mine wasn't. I sat there in my office for about 20 minutes staring at the screen. Then I did something smart. I didn't scream. I didn't call her. I didn't confront her. I downloaded the clip, saved it to 3 different hard drives, emailed a copy to myself, emailed a copy to Martinez. And I waited. For 2 months, I watched her make that same trip 7 more times. Same spot, same black Charger, same routine. Always backed in, always facing outward. I documented everything, dates, times, screenshots. I built a case file like I was a prosecutor. And then I called Martinez. He watched the footage without saying a word. When it was over, he leaned back in his chair and said, "You've got her. The infidelity clause is ironclad. She signed it knowing the consequences. With this evidence, she gets nothing." I filed for divorce the next week. I thought it was going to be open and shut. I was wrong. Her lawyer, Thompson, came out swinging. The first hearing was supposed to be routine, just preliminary motions. But Thompson had a different plan. She didn't deny the affair. She didn't argue about the footage. She attacked the prenup itself. She stood up in that courtroom and said the prenup was invalid. I almost laughed. I watched this woman sign it. I watched her own lawyer tell her not to sign it, and now she's claiming it's invalid. But then Thompson explained her argument. She said that on our honeymoon in Cabo, I had a change of heart. She said I felt guilty about making my new bride sign such an aggressive contract. She said I told Crystal where I kept the prenup in our home safe and promised her that when we got back, I would destroy it. And according to Thompson, that's exactly what I did. She claimed that the week after we returned from Cabo, I took both copies of the prenup out of the safe, mine and Crystal's, and ripped them up in front of her as a gesture of love and trust. She said I told Crystal that our lawyers had copies on file, but they didn't matter because we would never need them. I sat there with my mouth open. That never happened, not one word of it. But Crystal took the stand, and she swore under oath that it did. She looked right at the judge and said, "The week after we got home from Cabo, he sat me down in his office. He opened the safe, took out both copies, and tore them in half right in front of me. He said from now on, we were equal partners. He said he was sorry he ever made me sign it." Her eyes were wet. Her voice cracked at all the right moments. She was good, and the judge bought it, at least enough to pause the case. He said we had a material dispute about the validity of the prenup. He said until it was resolved, we would have to proceed as if the prenup might not exist, which meant Crystal could be entitled to 50% of everything. 50% of my shop, 50% of my property, 50% of the business I spent 20 years building. $1.25 million. But it got worse. The judge froze my personal accounts pending the dispute, said it was standard procedure to prevent asset dissipation. He didn't want me hiding money before the divorce was final. The business account stayed open. Technically, the company could still operate, but I pay myself through distributions from the company. When the judge froze my personal accounts, he also put a lien on my distributions. Suddenly, I couldn't move money. From the business to myself. My credit line got flagged. My business credit card got frozen. Everything started to cascade. I had 15 employees counting on me. The company could make payroll, but I was drowning personally. I couldn't pay my mortgage. I couldn't pay Martinez's retainer. I was leveraged to the hilt, watching my life's work get strangled because my ex-wife told a lie about a piece of paper. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I lost 12 pounds in 3 weeks. I needed proof that she was lying. And that's when Martinez mentioned digital forensics. He said in divorce cases involving disputed evidence, we could subpoena the other party's electronic devices, phones, tablets, computers. The court could compel her to hand them over for examination. I said to Martinez, she'll just delete everything. Martinez smiled. He said, people always think deleting something makes it disappear. It doesn't. Everything leaves a trail. We filed the motion, her lawyer fought it, but the judge granted it. Crystal had to surrender her phone for a forensic examination. She handed it over with a smirk on her face. Wiped clean. Factory reset. She thought she was so smart. But she forgot about one thing. That old MacBook Air. When we first started dating, she had this laptop, rose gold. She used it for everything back then. Netflix, social media, iMessage. After we got married, she upgraded her phone and stopped carrying the laptop around. But she didn't get rid of it. She kept it plugged in on the nightstand in the guest room, used it to watch movies when she couldn't sleep. Sometimes she would use it as a backup alarm. It sat there for 2.5 years, connected to the Wi-Fi, synced to her Apple ID, quietly backing up every message that came through. She wiped her phone, but she forgot the MacBook was linked to the same Apple ID, forgot it had been receiving her iMessages this whole time. Martinez amended our discovery request, added language requesting any devices linked to her Apple ID or iCloud account, regardless of current usage status. Her lawyer tried to fight it, said it was a fishing expedition. The judge disagreed. He said if she had devices that might contain relevant communications, they were fair game. Martinez's forensic guy went through that MacBook, and it was like cracking open a time capsule. Everything was still there. 2.5 years of texts, photos, emails, all backed up automatically, synced through iCloud, sitting there waiting to be found. And buried in those messages, we found the smoking gun. It was a text to her sister dated about 4 months ago, long after the honeymoon, long after she claimed I destroyed the prenup. The text said, I can't just leave. You know what I signed? It's not like that paper magically disappeared. He keeps everything in that safe in his office. If I walk out now, I'm completely screwed. I read that message probably 10 times. It's not like that paper magically disappeared. He keeps everything in that safe. 4 months ago, 2 years after she claimed I tore up both copies in front of her, She admitted in her own words to her own sister that the prenup still existed, that she knew exactly where it was, that she was only staying because she was afraid of what would happen if she left. She buried herself. Martinez filed an emergency motion, submitted the text as evidence, requested an immediate hearing. 2 weeks later, we were back in court. Thompson tried to spin it, said the text was taken out of context, said that paper could have referred to something else, said there was no way to verify the message was authentic. But the forensic examiner took the stand. He explained chain of custody, metadata, timestamps, device identifiers. He showed how the message synced from her phone to her iCloud to the MacBook. He proved beyond any reasonable doubt that the message was real, unaltered, and sent from her device. The judge looked at Crystal. She looked at the table. He asked her directly, "Ma'am, did you send this text message?" Her lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Crystal sat there for a long time. 15 seconds, 20. It felt like an hour. And then, in a voice that was barely loud enough to hear, she said, "Yes." The judge kinda rolled his eyes after that. He said he had heard her testimony about the week after the honeymoon. He had heard her swear under oath that I'd destroyed both copies of the prenup in front of her. And now he had evidence in her own words that proved that testimony was demonstrably false. He said her story was a fabrication, a deliberate attempt to defraud me and mislead the court. Then he made his ruling. The prenup was valid and enforceable. Both copies were still in my safe. I produced them as evidence. The original was still on file with Martinez's office. Her entire defense was a lie. Based on the dash cam footage showing clear evidence of an extramarital affair, the infidelity clause was triggered. Crystal had forfeited all claims to spousal support and division of premarital assets. She got nothing. 0 in alimony, 0% of my business, 0 claim on my shop, my property, my accounts. The prenup did exactly what it was designed to do. But the judge wasn't done. He said that her fabricated defense constituted bad faith litigation. He said she knowingly presented false testimony to the court, wasted 4 months of judicial resources, forced me to spend 6 figures on forensic experts and emergency motions to prove something that should have been obvious from the start. Under Arizona's litigation misconduct statute, he had the authority to sanction her. He invoked fee shifting. That's a legal term. Means the losing party has to pay the winning party's legal costs when they've engaged in bad faith. Martinez had been billing $350 an hour for 8 months, plus $200 an hour for the forensic analyst, court reporters, filing fees, expert witness fees, emergency motion costs. The total came to $95,000, and the judge ordered her to pay every penny of it. I watched her face when he said the number. All that confidence she had walking into court. All that smirking and scheming. Gone. She looked at Thompson like she was hoping for some kind of lifeline. Thompson just shook her head. There was nothing left to say. The hearing ended. I shook Martinez's hand. He told me congratulations, but I didn't feel like celebrating. I felt tired. I walked out of that courthouse into the parking lot. The sun was too bright. Everything felt surreal. I saw her standing by the curb, waiting for a rideshare, I guess. No more F-250, no more black Charger boyfriend to pick her up. Just a woman in expensive clothes with nothing in her pockets but debt. She saw me looking. For a second, I thought she was going to say something, apologize maybe, explain something. But she just looked away, and I realized I didn't. I care anymore. I got in my truck, not the F-250. I sold that thing soon after the divorce proceedings started. My actual work truck, the 2018 Silverado, I keep at the shop for when I need to clear my head. I drove out to South Mountain, didn't have a destination, just needed to move. I thought about the last 2.5 years, the wedding, the honeymoon, all those nights I came home late and she was already asleep, all those mornings I left before she woke up. I thought about the office complex meetings, the black Charger, the lies she told without flinching. I thought about how close she came to taking everything. If I hadn't put that camera in the F-250 for insurance purposes, if she hadn't kept that MacBook plugged in by the guest room bed, if that one text message to her sister hadn't existed, she would have gotten away with it. $1.25 million, half my life's work, gone to someone who spent her afternoons in a parking lot with another man. But she didn't get away with it. And that's the thing about lies. They only work if nobody's keeping records. But someone's always keeping records. A dash cam, an old laptop synced to iCloud. The truth has a way of coming out. I pulled off the highway and parked at this overlook I used to go to when I was first starting out. Back when I had 2 welding machines and a dream, before the shop, before the money, before her. I sat there for a long time, and then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my mom. She's 76, lives in a retirement community up in Flagstaff. I don't visit enough. She asked me how I was doing. And for the first time in months, I told her the truth. I said, "I'm okay, Mom. I think I'm going to be okay." The next morning, I went back to work. My distributions were unfrozen. My credit line was restored. I had a mountain of problems to solve, but at least I could solve them now. 4 months later, the business was fully stable again. I hired a couple new welders, replaced the equipment I'd been neglecting, even took a weekend off for the first time in God knows how long. I heard that Crystal had to sell her jewelry to make a payment on the legal fees, that she moved back in with her parents, that the other guy stopped returning her calls about a week after the court ruling became public record. Funny how that works. Martinez told me the court referred her case to the county attorney's office. Turns out, when you lie under oath and a judge catches you, they don't just let it slide. They open a file. Perjury is a felony in Arizona. I don't know if they'll actually prosecute, but I know she's not sleeping well these days. And honestly, I don't feel bad about that. I'm not telling you this story because I want sympathy. I knew what I was getting into. 45 years old, marrying a woman 17 years younger. Everyone warned me. I didn't listen. I'm telling you this story because of what I learned. Protect yourself. Document everything. And never assume someone loves you enough to play fair when money is on the line. That prenup wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a firewall. When everything went wrong, when she tried to burn my life to the ground with a fabricated story, that contract held. The cameras held. The evidence held. She thought she could handle me. She thought she was smarter. She was wrong. Well, that's my story. That's why I'm sitting here at this bar at 2 in the afternoon, drinking whiskey I don't need. Not because I'm sad. I'm not sad anymore. I'm relieved. I gotta keep my shop. I gotta keep my business. I got to watch a woman who lied to a judge's face walk out of that courthouse with nothing but debt and regret. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to wake up at 4:30. I'm going to drive to the shop. I'm going to check on my equipment, and I'm going to keep building. Because that's what I do. I build things. And nobody, not her, not the courts, not some guy in a black Charger, is ever going to take that away from me. I've come too far to stop fighting for what I built. And after the year I've had, I think I've earned the right to keep fighting, to maintain my way of life. But here's what really haunts me about this whole thing. It wasn't the affair that broke my heart. Affairs happen. People cheat. Hearts change. That's human nature, and I could have forgiven that. What broke my trust wasn't the sex in some stranger's car, it was the calculation. She didn't just betray our marriage. She tried to steal my life's work with a fabricated story. She looked a judge in the eye and lied under oath, not in passion, not in anger, but as a cold, calculated strategy to take half of everything I'd built with my hands over 20 years. That's what keeps me up at night. Not the image of her kissing that guy through his car window. It's the image of her sitting in Thompson's office, planning out that story about me destroying the prenup, working through the details, rehearsing the tears, practicing the emotional delivery. She thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers, thought she could manipulate the system, manipulate me, manipulate a judge with a performance. She underestimated 3 things: technology, preparation, and the fact that lies leave digital footprints. Every surveillance system I installed was for legitimate business purposes. The GPS tracking to manage my fleet, the cameras for insurance liability, the documentation habits that saved my business. But when push came to shove, those same systems became my defense against someone who tried to destroy me with perjury. That's the lesson I want you to take from this. It's not about being paranoid or suspicious of everyone you love. It's about being prepared. The same business practices that made my company successful were the ones that saved it. Document everything. Keep records. Understand that in a world where everything is digital, the truth has a way of surfacing. Think about what would have happened if I'd been the guy who just used his phone to track trucks, who paid cash for everything, who kept his business records in a shoebox. Crystal would be sitting in my shop right now, controlling half of everything, because there wouldn't have been any evidence to contradict her story. But technology is only as good as the person using it. If I hadn't been methodical about documentation, if I hadn't had the discipline to wait and build a case instead of confronting her immediately, if I hadn't chosen a lawyer who understood digital forensics, none of it would have mattered. The irony is that the very work ethic she claimed to admire when we were dating, the same attention to detail that made her lifestyle possible, was exactly what exposed her lies when it mattered most. She fell in love with the benefits of my character, but not the character itself. I've thought a lot about what Martinez said at the beginning. They never are until they are. He was right, but not in the way I expected. Crystal wasn't evil when I married her. She was just someone who, when faced with a choice between doing the right thing and getting paid, chose getting paid. And when that didn't work, she chose perjury. The person I married would never have looked a judge in the eye and told a calculated lie to steal someone's life's work. But the person sitting in that courtroom was someone I didn't recognize. Money changes people. The possibility of easy money changes them even more. I'm not bitter anymore. Bitter is what you feel when you lose something unfairly. I didn't lose. The system worked exactly the way it was supposed to. Evidence beat lies. Preparation beat manipulation. Truth beat perjury. What I am is grateful. Grateful that I learned this lesson at 45 with time to rebuild my personal life, instead of at 65 with everything gone. Grateful that my business survived. Grateful that the technology I rely on every day was there when I needed it most. And I'm grateful for that one text message to her sister. 4 months ago, Crystal Rodriguez gave me the evidence I needed to save my business by admitting in her own words that she was lying. She defeated herself with her own device, her own account, her own words. There's something poetic about that. She tried to use the legal system to steal from me, and the same system used her own evidence to stop her. She tried to destroy the business that surveillance technology helped me build, and that technology saved it. If there's a deeper truth to this story, it's this. In an age where everything is recorded, backed up, and digitally preserved, character matters more than ever. You can't fake your way through life when every conversation leaves a trail. The people who understand that build things that last. The people who don't eventually expose themselves, usually with their own evidence, in their own words, on their own devices. The truth doesn't just set you free. It protects everything you've worked for, if you're smart enough to document it and patient enough to let it surface.